Hey folks, welcome back to another episode here at Timeout Kitchen. Now, normally I would say that we're cooking at home, but today is a bit special as we're visiting and cooking for family in Argentina. Now, while we don't have control over the lights, sounds, or temperatures, we do have one huge advantage, and that is access to traditional Argentine barbecue, also known as asado. That's right, a foreigner is going to be cooking some local food. Now, where this style of barbecue is unique is that we cook over wood-fired coals and food is dressed using just salt. No sauces, no 10 hours of smoking, just fire, meat, and salt. Where this style of barbecue isn't unique is that it has lots of meat, enough to fill 2 cutting boards in fact. So to fill those cutting boards, let's start with some sausage, or in this case, chorizo. This is what they call sausage down there, and this is a perfect pork sausage that you're going to want to grab for the grill. We're also going to grab some lollipop chorizo. This is the same type of meat, except that it is ground more coarsely, and this is probably my favorite version. So put those little guys to the side and grab your first piece of meat. Now this is going to be a very large unrolled piece of flank steak, also known as a vacío. Unlike flank steak that you might find in North America, they keep the fat on and all of the goodness there, and this is something that even though we're going to trim slightly, it will crisp up nicely on the grill while maintaining immense beef flavor. So go ahead and fold that neatly onto your cutting board and grab your short rib. These are also known as tira de asado, and these are basically just going to be your traditional short ribs that you would use for braising, except they have a little bit more fat, and we'll be cooking them bone side down. Oh, and for good measure, we grabbed 2 because these are just delicious. So go ahead and put your about 8 pounds of short ribs off to the side, because it's time to grab your skirt steak. Now this is a thin, tender piece of meat that you're going to cook really quickly. It's also known as entraña, so it has a bit more of that fat as all the other pieces do, and you can see we're going to have to remove this skin on the backside as well. In any case, roll this up and put this to the side, because we're going to be grabbing something that you might be a little less familiar with. Sweetbreads. Now, if you've never seen this or you don't know what this is the thymus gland, and it's actually quite delicious. It's going to go with some salt and some lemon, but it's also quite fatty, so naturally, we got 3 of them. So go ahead and lovingly place those down before grabbing your beef tenderloin. Down here, this cut is known as lomo, and it remains the Rolls Royce of all the beef cuts. Super tender with a mild beef flavor that's going to cook slowly on our grill until medium rare. Now, one thing to notice is that this tenderloin still has its silver skin, and it is very important to remove that, so make sure you have a sharp knife to do so. So there you go, enough meat to feed a small army, all for under $50. Yeah, I know. Now, with all this meat, you might be wondering where all the vegetables might be. There aren't any. This is just one big meat tornado.
They have one that's called the meat tornado. Literally killed a guy last year.
You had me at meat tornado.
And speaking of things that are powerful and meaty, B-roll. With that beautiful B-roll out of the way, it is time to remove the silver skin from this tenderloin. So with your freshly sharpened knife, you're going to gently and carefully remove the silver skin, taking care to remove as little meat as possible. Again, depending on the size of the cut that you get and the butcher you go to, you may be able to simply get this removed already, but in this case, they just kind of sell it to you like this, and you got to remove it gently on your own. In any case, do your best to remove as much silver skin as possible, and you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So go ahead and put that to the side because we're going to grab our next piece of meat, and that is going to be our skirt steak. So go ahead and slap that down and try to remove the membrane. Now you're going to notice that it's rather slippery and probably not coming off, but we have a trick, and that is to grab a bit of paper towel. The paper towel is going to keep your hands dry while also helping you grip that membrane, so just give this a quick pull and it should come off easily. The reason for removing this tough membrane is it's going to keep our meat much more tender. So here you can see our skirt steak is now cleaned up. We're just going to fold it over and move it off to the side. Up next is our flank steak. Now you can see that we have both membrane and excess fat, so we're going to go ahead and trim a little bit of that fat off. Now it looks like I've removed a good amount of fat, but we've simply removed the excess, and there's plenty to help flavor this beautiful cut of meat. Now I did mention a membrane, and this is optional to remove. It's a bit tougher to remove than on the skirt steak, but it's something that's worth doing. Again, for the same reasons is that this is going to be something that doesn't cook down well, and it's going to help with the tenderness. So once you've cleaned your flank steak, go ahead and fold that up and move this to the side, because it's finally time to season all this meat. So go ahead and slap down the cut of your choice, and then grab your only seasoning, salt. So naturally it's time to salt our meat, so go ahead and generously cover every inch of your cuts. Now I'm using kosher salt, and I do recommend that you do the same, but in any case, whatever salt you use, make sure that you use enough of it. This is important to add flavor, but also to help render out all the fat. So you can see we've generally salted this skirt steak, so we're going to move this to the side and continue with our flank. We're simply going to repeat this process for every cut of meat that we have, and we're just going to make sure that every inch is covered. If you're a little inexperienced with how much salt to add, that's okay. You can always add more later, but it is better to do it now while it gets on the grill. And then we're going to repeat this process for the short ribs as well. Now, of course, the thicker the cut of meat, the more salt it's going to need, but it's okay to just generally cover this fairly liberally. Something that looks a little bit like this. Now the sweetbreads are going to get the same treatment, except they're going to have a bit of lemon both at the start of grilling and right before they come off the heat. So while salting these, you might begin to wonder to yourself, how do I check the quality of these? Well, just get an expert to make sure we're good. Thanks, Dad. Now that the sweetbreads are quality checked and salted, go ahead and grab your tenderloin. Now, like every other cut of meat, you should definitely salt this heavily. However, in my case, due to not wanting to go against a special request from the matriarch of the family, I won't be doing that. In any case, salt this up as you see fit before putting this off to the side, because it's time to show off a plethora of salted meats. There you have it. Add a bit of salt and all of our prep is done. And if I forgot to mention, all of this was less than $50, which is mind-blowing. Anyways, let's not get distracted by that. Let's get to the grilling. So get your meats ready for transport by putting them into the largest containers that you can find, and let's make our way to the grill, making sure to take in all the beautiful wildlife. Anyways, terrible jokes aside, this is the grill that we'll be working with. Now, it's a bit dirty, but that's okay, it is easily cleaned. So grab yourself some starter, in this case some newspaper, as well as some dry kindling, as well as some wood charcoal. Now, we won't use this right away, but we will add this once we have a fire going. And for your auditory pleasure, I'm going to let you hear exactly what all that sounds like. Alright, don't admire your work for too long because now you have to keep adjusting the heat. This is where the skill and experience of Argentinian barbecue really take over. Each cut needs varying degrees of heat and time, and it's your job to figure all of that out. The only real tip that I can give you here, folks, is that it's better to undercook than overcook. So don't be afraid to take a cut of meat off the grill and give it a test. Alternatively, I suppose you could use a thermometer, but that would make you look like a rookie, and we're trying to look like professionals here, so come on. Now, after about 15 or 20 minutes, you'll start to see some pretty good color here. So this is our piece of flank steak. You can see it is rendered out quite nicely, but the fat is curling that piece of meat. So we're going to quickly draw a couple slices in there and then put it back on the other side. Our other piece of flank steak has already been flipped and cooking for a bit longer and is pretty much done. You can see how much that fat has rendered out, guys. Look at the color, and I promise you the flavor with just the salt is going to be mind-blowing. So let's go ahead and transfer this into our serving dish and move this off to the side. After about 45 minutes, your short ribs are ready to come off the grill, and you can just see all of that fat render and the beautiful color that we've got going on. With some real estate now available, we're going to put down our sweetbreads for about 10 minutes aside on high heat, making sure we add a good amount of lemon. Now during this process, we're going to be constantly checking meat, moving over some more hot coals, flipping things, and removing things as needed. The goal is to keep relatively even temperatures across certain parts of the grill, and don't be afraid to move things to hotter or cooler parts as needed. So this flank steak has been on for a while now, and the fat is nice and rendered. So let's take this flavorful cut off the grill and put it to the side so it can rest. So it's been about 25 or 30 minutes, so grab your tiny fork and flip over your 5-pound piece of tenderloin. That salt should have helped develop a nice crisp crust on the outside, and you should have a beautifully cooked piece of meat like so. It's also time to give these bad boys a quick flip as well and let them cook another 10 minutes or so until they're slightly crispy. Again, you'll be adding a hit of lemon right before they come off the grill. So this was a bit awkward to remove from the grill, but you can see here is our fully cooked beef tenderloin. It is a beautiful cut of meat, super tender, but it needs to rest for a few minutes. And while that's resting, it's the perfect time to remove our lollipop chorizos. These are going to be perfect for serving, and while they're still hot, you can see that they have a nice char to them. And with most of the items removed from our grill, let's get to serving. Now, every asado is going to start with chorizo. Think of it like a pork-tastic appetizer. Anyways, separate these and go ahead and remove the strings. Now, you could eat it just like this, but allow me to introduce you to the beautiful world of the choripan, quite literally chorizo and bread. These little guys pack a flavorful punch thanks to the spices and fat from the pork and the subtle smokiness from the wood fire. They're perfect for sharing and best eaten hot off the grill. Now, like everything else, we don't really put any condiments on this. You literally just eat it like this, and yeah, it's good. Like, I ate 3 or 4 of these good. But as usual, we don't have time to enjoy our food because we have got some skirt steak to cook. So grab some coals, make a nice hot spot on the grill, and then place this beautiful cut down for about 3 or 4 minutes per side. That's right, unlike the other cuts, this is going to be cooked at a high temperature very quickly. So after about 4 or 5 minutes, we're giving this a quick flip, and you can already see we have a beautiful color. Do the same to the other one, and these are basically going to be done in another 2 minutes. With that done, grab a cutting board because it's time to start slicing up all this beautiful meat. I mean, look at it all. We've got our flank steak, we've got our tenderloin, we've got our short ribs, we've got our skirt steak, and we've got our sweetbreads. It's a lot of delicious meat, and we've got to get it ready to serve. So naturally, I'm going to start with the leader of the pack, the beef tenderloin. So grab your knife, quickly slice this to get that beautiful cross section, and thanks to lighting, it's a bit hard to see, but this is actually sitting at a nice medium to medium rare cook. It's juicy and super tender. Next up is our skirt steak, and we want a nice rare cook on this, which is exactly what we have. Now, personally, I prefer this cut over the tenderloin because it has a lot more beef flavor. And one of the perks of being the cook is taste testing the food, and this is delicious. But wipe the drool from your face and just go ahead and pass this to your helper so they can slice it, because we gotta move on to the short ribs. And you can see they're beautiful, crisp, delicious, and the fat has been rendered down. These short ribs pack a ton of flavor, and you can see how nice and tender they've become, and you'll get an amazing hit of smokiness from that wood fire. Next up is our flank steak, so go ahead and give this a quick slice so you can see a cross section. Again, you can see this is nice and medium rare. It's a little hard to see with the lighting, guys, but look at all the juice coming out. You still have that beautiful layer of fat on top. Now down here, we usually just eat this with our hands or a fork and knife, but let's be honest, this meat would go amazing in any sandwich or with any meal. It's truly simple cooking at its finest, and it is goddamn delicious. So there you go, folks, a gringo or foreigner cooking some asado. This food truly is special to me, and I do hope you have an opportunity to try some classic Argentine style barbecue, because I promise you will not be disappointed. And with that, we're done. Thanks so much for watching until the end of the video. As always, thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. We will see you in the next one.